This conference
activity
will now
launch.
be recorded.
Oh, okay. I guess we'll start the recording. But just wanted to say that I'm excited that we're launching this series. It has been a brainchild of the entire committee, and definitely excited about having uh, Janine Davis Hook connect us up with getting this kicked off. We've been talking about this for several months, but here we are right here, ready to start off. And the real stars of the show are all of those who dialed in and are interested in hearing about uh, the tools, techniques, tips, and tricks for being efficient and effective as in the role of secretary. But without any further ado or delay, I'll go ahead and hand it over to Janine, and she can get us kicked off and get us started.
Thanks, Todd. Well, welcome everybody. In case you didn't hear what Todd said, I'm Janine Davis, and I'll be your moderator for the first of our Sips and Snacks events. Thanks, as he said, thanks for joining us. And as Todd said, we hope that these insights and best practices shared tonight will greatly benefit you, your club, or your council. But also, we want to make sure that we hear from you, and we look forward to hearing from your experiences. Before we get any further, I want to make sure everybody's got their sip. I didn't do a snack because I love crackers, and crackers would have been just a bit too noisy. So we'll go ahead and get started. We'll start with some housekeeping first. And I don't know if you all heard the little um, voiceover that came on that said this is being recorded. So it is being recorded for future viewing for those people who were not able to attend tonight, or if you want to come back and take a look at it. And if you haven't already given us your email address through registration, please post it in the chat box. And the chat box, at least on my laptop, it's up in the top right hand corner. It may be in a different location for you if you're on a excuse me, on a tablet or on your phone, but we would like that. And we would also like to know what club and council you belong to, just to give us some sense of what or which clubs and councils are represented tonight. We are going to go ahead and mute everybody for the time being, but we'll take you off for questions and answers. And any questions that you have can also be posted up in the chat box. Todd's going to be monitoring the chat box, and Linda and Gloria are going to be checking things out if you have any technical problems. So the first question that I would ask, if you would put your answer into the chat box, is, are you currently a secretary at the club or council level? And if so, how comfortable are you in that position right now? So if you would take a few moments to answer that, we would greatly appreciate it. While you're doing that, I'll start my introduction of tonight's experts. And our two experts tonight are currently or previously served as secretary on to Far West. And some of you may already know them. That's Tina, who's newer, Tina Lyons, who's newer to the position. Tina is waving at you. And then we have Sherry Parshall. Sherry, wave. And they are representing Tina as our newer to the position, and Sherry as having more terms, so a little bit more experience. So we're going to have them start off by talking about why they decided to run for secretary, and what other positions they've held at the club, council, or Far West level. And so, Tina, we'll go ahead and start with you, and I'm going to take you off mute. Or no, I can't do. There we go. Go ahead, Tina.
Hi, everybody. As far as my past goes and the other positions that I've held, I was VP of the Ski and Ski Club, and I also served on various committees with that club. And I have been secretary of 2 or 3 other clubs outside the ski functions, and as well as president and VP. So that's kind of my background in this. And the reason why I signed up to be secretary of FWSA Ski Association is because so many of my friends were in the association. They needed help with the position, and also there are just a lot of really cool people in this association.
And now you want to hear about me. I also been secretary for Scante. I was a secretary for the Mount Hood Museum and a couple of other professional organizations. I have a background as a technical writer um, and an admin person. So I typed really fast. So I learned from the best. I like to say Debbie. I followed Debbie Stewart, not immediately after Debbie, but I followed Debbie, who gave me outstanding instruction. And again, it was a position. For some reason, people are afraid to be a secretary. So again, it was a position they reached out to me for, and I had experience doing it. So did it for 6 years, I think. So I enjoyed it. I had fun doing it, and we're hoping that we'll get some of you to want to have fun doing it too.
Thanks for that information. And so now we're going to move on to responsibilities. So Tina, if you would talk a little bit about what you know as are the responsibilities of the secretary, and talk a little bit about what your expectations were when you started, and now that you've got some time under your belt.
I think my expectations were pretty much met just because because of Sherry's tutorage, or because I had Sherry behind me explaining things and telling me what to do. So my expectations were pretty much the same as I expected. But that's only because I had somebody telling me exactly what I was going to be doing. Um, and as far as uh, actually doing the job, it's I think the only thing that I've been surprised about is the time that it takes, but I don't think that that's unusual either.
So what are some of the responsibilities that you have as secretary?
The responsibilities that in this position are to take care of people's name tags, take care of people's business cards, take care of the non-disclosure agreements, keep track of the people at the meetings who have them and who don't, and then of course take the minutes. So uh, take uh, take attendance, make sure that I have everyone who's there, um, and then make sure I get all the votes that we do correct and who seconds them and get the motions correct. Just regular minutes type things.
Thank you for that. And Sherry, you've got several terms under your belt. How did things change from when you first started in that position to when you left? And is there anything that you can add to what Tina said in terms of additional responsibilities or things that caught you by surprise?
I don't think things changed really. We did bring that non-disclosure document into being, and we also had a situation where we had to develop the ability to have a vote online. So there was a document we had to send around once a year. We had to remember to do that annually because everyone in the organization has to sign that, or no one can, or we can't do it. So that was a new thing that happened during my tenure. Everything else was pretty much same stuff, different day.
Okay, well, thank And for the rest of you, what are those of you that are serving as a secretary or are familiar with the secretary position for your club or council. Can you tell us if there are any responsibilities that Tina and Sherry didn't talk about that you know occur within your organization? And if you'd put those in the chat box, that would be greatly appreciated. We'll take a few minutes to give you that opportunity to see if there are any surprises, because we hope to learn from you all as well.
And Janine, I did see a just to give some background on um, some of the chats that we've seen so far. Dale and Dale is actually with North Island Snowdrifters. He's their secretary, and he's been secretary for 8 to 9 years. Was the VP for 2 years, and he says that I like help. I think it's Dale. I'm not certain, but
Yes,
I
yes,
like
sir.
helping out. Feel very comfortable doing it.
Yes,
Excellent,
sir.
excellent.
Yeah, I wouldn't add any much more. We developed a little. Uh, we'll probably get into it more, but just to kind of track normal reoccurring activities, we developed kind of a we call it a tickler list, just to remind us of repetitive upcoming dates. For example, when our insurances are typically due, um, when we need to start, making decisions on various things. We developed this list that kind of lists those on a monthly basis. Uh, we kind of call it a tickler list. Um, and I kind of remind the board of that every meeting, what's on there and what's coming up, to give everybody kind of start them thinking, about some of the things we got coming up on the radar. So, um, I kind of developed that, and that's been helpful. Other than that, it's just, it's like some of the other people's mentioned, keeping track of the minutes, and it's been a little more difficult with virtual because everybody's talking at the same time, and it's hard to kind of get who seconded that, who was that. Kind of kind of nicer when you meet in person, I think. But anyway, that's just the way it is, especially through COVID. So anyway, I don't really have anything else to say, but thank you, Todd.
Anybody else want to share some insight or what they've experienced? Okay. Well, then we can move on to what have been some of the challenges. Tina, would you like to talk about some of the challenges that you face as a new secretary?
Oh yeah, as a new secretary, there are challenges in that you don't always know who everyone is. You don't always know the issues that they're talking about. And so that's kind of difficult when it's all, happening at the same time as the meeting and you have to, and sometimes you think and then later when you're rereading them, you figure out, no, that you didn't know that at all. So I think it's context. Maybe you would call it context. Sometimes you don't have all the context of the organization. Um, with this one, because it does so many things and is so big. With my other organizations, for instance, I do the export side of my business, but the other people on another association I'm with do the import side, and I don't always know what they're talking about. So I think one of the challenges is to, learn how to interrupt, learn how to say, hey, could you explain that? And also feel comfortable asking afterwards. In this association, everyone's been really kind to me about answering questions afterwards when I know I didn't quite get it right. Everybody's been really gracious and kind doing that. So that is one of the challenges, is just context, I would think. And like I said, it's not really a problem because everybody's been really kind and gracious about helping me.
Thanks. And Sherry, how about you?
Well, I was fortunate because I had been part of Far West for since 1999. So I came into it kind of with familiarity of the people, familiarity with the ongoing projects that were going on. So again, that was I had quite a bit of a head start over Portina with regard to knowing at least even who's talking, because sometimes you don't know who's talking. Um, So that at least I had an advantage there. So it does help if you come into the organization knowing a little bit about who's in it and what's been going on.
Okay, and to the group, are there any challenges that Tina and Sherry didn't mention that you'd like to make us aware of, things that we might need to take into consideration in the future? And you can put those in the chat box, or you can, just go ahead and unmute yourself and share with us that way.
I think that
While
they
we're
made a
doing
good
that,
point.
I was going to say that Bill Benke added in the chat box that at their club, they instituted an online document base of minutes once they're approved so that board members have access. And this helps to keep track of what the board has done previously. And as time passes, that seems to be more and more important.
As our board turns over, um, it's we used to maintain paper bases, databases of important decisions and whatnot, and it almost became tribal knowledge. So as we did this when we moved to Club Express, that we're able to build a document database of, and that's where we put all our minutes. So that if someone says, "Well, did we talk about this?" All the documents are all there. We can go back and say, "Yeah, 2 years ago, this is what we decided to do," and that's helped hugely in continuity. Before all this automation, the president used to maintain a notebook full of all that stuff, and it just didn't have general access.
So
I
Bill,
did also, yeah, go ahead.
what do you use to store your minutes? Do you use Google Docs, or do you just post it as a PDF on your website?
Um, I'm converting everything to PDF because that way it's commonality across platforms, and we put it into the document. I've built a documents page using Club Express, and then we set a group access so that anyone who's on the board can access it, and that way they can get in and take a look at records. The next institution we're going to do, which is kind of a field from this, is we're going to do the same thing with our financial reports. Is we're going to start archiving them on the website for board access and members access.
Okay.
But
Joe,
I unmuted myself because I think there was something that was really important that Sherry said, which is that when you're trying to keep track of who's saying what and what's going on in a board meeting as secretary, the fact that Sherry knew the people, had some familiarity with them, and was able to put names to voices and faces, I think that's got to be a huge advantage. In our club, we try not to move people into positions, officer positions like that, until they've served as an at-large member, so they can get a feel for how things are happening. And but however that happens, I think that's huge because keeping track on the fly as a secretary, it can be challenging. I've done president in the Phoenix Ski Club 6 years total at this point, and a good secretary can make or break us. Honestly, it just makes a huge difference. So that's what I got.
thanks. And Joe, I think you raised your hand. Did I see your hand up?
Yes, I just wanted to follow up what Bill said. We have Far West uses Club Express as well, and there's a document library within Club Express where you can set up folders ad nauseum to store different things like financial reports or minutes, and so on and so forth. So you can label it as you need and store all your documents there. I mean, that if you have Club Express. If you don't, at the National Ski Council Federation, uh, we also upload all of our documents, and they're stored online and available to the members to whether there are minutes or our educational sessions, what have you. That everything is there for the members that want to see it. It's so it's not just reliant on somebody having a paper copy.
And since we are part of the succession planning committee, there's always that possibility that something will happen to somebody And then you don't want to be scurrying around wondering, well, where is this? Where is that? And so that makes it more readily available. So excellent use of today's technology. Okay.
And it looks like Dale has his hand up.
Dale,
Yeah,
did you have?
yeah, yes, sir. I was just for the last two gentlemen that spoke. When you post your minutes publicly, how do you handle things where you might have a topic that comes before the board that you want to be kind of private, or do you just redact it, or how do you deal with that?
As far as the Far West minutes and the Federation minutes, they're not public. They're member only access.
Okay, I thought you said it was you posted it for the membership to see. I didn't know if that meant just the board or whether it meant
Well, depending
the
on the
membership
organization,
at large.
yes, the Far West, it's just the board. For the Federation, it's the each representative of each council is the so they're the board of the National Federation. So
Okay,
it's not available to the general public, only to those people who are designated as the representative for their council at the national level. At the Far West level, it's only visible to current board members.
okay, thank
So
you.
not to the general members.
Dale, in our case, we're very, very sensitive to recording, that kind of personalities thing. So we tend to tell the secretary not to include it unless it's something actionable.
Okay,
Because of the fact that a lot of our members are very long-term people, and people do things that are probably not always ideal. But unless we have to do an action, we're pretty sensitive to saying it's outside the scope of the minutes because it's not actionable, and we just leave it out.
got it. Okay, thank you, sir.
Okay, and I do have one question for the folks here other than Tina and Sherry. How do you go about recording roll call votes, or do you have roll call votes?
We don't have roll call votes by default. And typically in the 6 years I've been president, we've never had anyone demand one. So it's available under Roberts, but typically we're talking about 6 or 7 people, and unless there's a serious issue, well, it's just never come up for us. So we don't worry about that. We just record whether or not it passed.
Thanks, Bill. Anybody else want to chime in with their experience? Joe?
I do see that Bill said that our secretary writes notes into our agenda document during minutes or during meetings, and if the president stays on track on agenda, then that helps their secretary keep track. It doesn't speak to the question at hand, but I wanted to at least share that as well.
Thanks, Todd.
And Joe Simpson has her hand up.
Oh, Joe? Thank you, Gloria.
Yeah, for the Far West Board of Trustees, occasionally there will be a matter brought that's sensitive, and we just redact that from the Board of Trustee minutes.
Thanks.
Okay.
Okay.
And, to go back to your question about recording roll call.
Yes, Joe.
At the Federation meeting, business meeting, we do take a roll call, and it is recorded as here or not there. At the Far West board meetings, I don't know if it's Gloria and Linda, correct me if I'm wrong. It really hasn't been formal. We know in advance who's going to be there and who isn't. So that's pretty much how we record who is present. No, Sherry? No?
No, there's a sign in, there's a sign up list that the secretary maintains that goes around normally, that everyone signs, because we don't always know who's going to show up. So there's a list that goes around that is signed. We don't call roll, but there is a list that goes around that, signature and what you're doing there.
But this question is around voting, not just attendance, but around voting for motions.
And Far West has in the past, or at least when I was secretary, there are occasions where we had officers who were not permitted to participate in votes, particularly if they worked for a fiduciary institution and were not allowed to vote on motions that dealt with the fiduciary activities of the association. And so therefore we were required to note that that person is abstaining from the motion. Or if someone wanted to be recorded as a no vote, if a motion was passing but someone wasn't happy, they're more than happy to say, I would like my name recorded as a no vote. And in that case, that person's name gets written accordingly. But we didn't, the Far West did not do a roll call vote per se.
Thanks, Sherry. Bill, you had your hand up. Did you have a question or a comment?
No, it was, I think Todd covered it as far as taking roll for attendances versus taking roll call votes. I think probably we're all keeping track of people who are attending the meetings in our minutes. I know our secretary does, so that's why I dropped it again.
Okay, thank you. Okay.
I do see Joe. Joe Simpson, is your hand? Do you have a new hand, or is that an old hand sitting up?
Old hand, I forgot to take it down. Sorry.
Okay, no problem. I did want to share that with the NBS Western region, when it is a financial decision, there is a roll call vote so that it's noted who's for and who was against. But that's usually for financial decisions that, especially if it's the approval of the budget or approval of some financial matter, a financial decision that has been made.
Is that a bylaw requirement, Todd, or is that something you just do?
You know, that's a good point. I do believe it is part of our bylaws now that you mention that.
Okay, anybody else? Going, gone. On to the next one. Let's see. So our last topic before we do wrap up and so forth are tips, techniques, and tools. And so Tina, would you start us off with your suggestions for some tips, techniques, and tools?
Well, Sherry's going to be better than me, but I think one of the suggestions that already is very helpful is putting the agenda into your notes or following the agenda. I don't know how you would do it otherwise. That's just invaluable. And to do as much as you can beforehand. So if there are reports, look at the reports, familiarize yourself with them so that you know what's coming and that you can just put the report submitted. Same with the attendance, all that sort of thing. Do as much as you can beforehand so that, it's all done.
Okay, and Sherry, what would you like to add to what Tina has said?
Again, Tina, that is the most important thing, especially when you've got a 2-day meeting or a 3-day meeting. I think being able to type as you go is an invaluable tool. I know that not every club can do that. I know that people are still writing in longhand on a sheet of paper, and we make do with what we've got. So we all do the best with what we have.
Okay,
I do
and
have a question that might be for later.
okay.
I'm super curious if anybody is using AI or Chat GPT to have tested that for meeting minutes.
Using what, Tina?
AI, Chat GPT, any of these things they advertise for taking minutes. Oh, and also I wanted to add to that, we do record our meetings when they're not in person, and that theoretically should also help.
So this is the first I've heard about this. What did you call it again, Tina? I'm sorry. Being out of
Joe
the
or
room,
somebody
not
like Joe
familiar.
may have a better idea of what exactly it's called, but there are programs now, there's artificial intelligence that can take your meeting notes for you. And I don't think they're in any way perfect. You would still have to curate it and look at it, and train it. But I'm just curious if anyone has seen that, tried it at any companies. I know there's probably some high tech companies that are using that.
Okay, something for the future to think about, right? Okay, and one thing that was mentioned a couple of times by people was something about Robert's Rules of Orders. Robert's Rules of Order, sorry. Would you suggest that a secretary become familiar with those? Even though I know some clubs and councils have parliamentarians and so forth, but does it help to have sort of a basic knowledge of Robert's rules?
I'll say one word and then I'm going to defer to Sherry mostly, but yes, I think especially when voting.
Yes, it does help. However, you need to be careful because if your bylaws don't specify that you follow them, you don't have to.
Yeah, that's where we're at. We use Roberts as needed. We do have a parliamentarian listed, and our attitude pretty much is that the parliamentarian should keep an eye on if we're going completely seriously off the rails, and typically we expect the president to have a handle on that as well. The secretary, we figure when you're in the middle of a meeting, the secretary's got enough to do without trying to keep track of whether or not we're violating Robert's rules somehow. I don't want to
However,
overload a secretary in the moment, truthfully.
there are occasions when the secretary needs to remind people that there is a motion on the floor and the
Oh,
question
hell
has
yes.
been called.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I just wanted to join in and say that that question about Chat GPT, that is a great question. I'm familiar with Chat GPT. It is an artificial intelligence tool that will um, complete your sentences. If you give it a topic, it will write things for you. I haven't figured out how to use it in the context we're talking, because um, the secretaries online know that the conversation cannot be anticipated in a meeting. And so it'll be very interesting if you can train your application of Chat GPT to anticipate what the leaders of your organization will do. I did also want to share in again a concept or a tool that, and it's been talked about, of preparing and planning, but also if you request the reports in an electronic format, whether you attach the reports to the minutes or you copy the minutes or copy the reports and paste them into the minutes. Has anyone found one of those means or some other mean to be preferred from tracking and recording the activities of the meeting?
We tend not to try and incorporate our reports into the minutes. We prefer to keep them separate. That way, if we need to make a change, to the financials for some reason. We don't have to go back in and muck about with the minutes. It's since we have access to everything digitally, we don't see any reason to consolidate them because the board members have access to the financials should they need to see them, the trip budgets should they need to see them, the minutes should they need to see them. So we try to keep it separate rather than trying to kludge together a giant document that has everything stuffed into it.
Great. Thank you.
I have a couple of
Ditto.
follow-on questions. One of them is, do you have laptops that are the property of, or computers or pads or tablets or whatever, that are the property of your club or council that you pass from secretary to secretary or other similar positions? Or do you leave it up to the individual to provide their own technology equipment?
Our ski club gives the treasurer a computer, but the secretary is on their own.
I was going to say that.
Same with the federation. Your own equipment. We don't own it. The federation does not own any equipment.
Yeah,
Okay.
everyone runs their own equipment. We do, however, use cloud-based software as appropriate, especially like we're running QuickBooks and we're running QuickBooks Online, so that we just have to move from treasurer to treasurer without having to move a physical piece of hardware or software.
Right.
I think the secretary position, because as Sherry has said, it's all about kind of how fast you can type and also the formatting. So I think using your own hardware and what you're used to typing on and all that might be a little bit more important in the secretary position, because you just have to be comfortable to sit down and go with what you have instead of learning some other laptop that you're not usually using. So I think that's kind of probably where that, is differentiated.
Okay.
The NBS Western Region, the treasurer has a laptop, even though it's clunky, and we can't get into our accounting tool right at this point. So we do need to start doing something online, and then the secretary uses their own equipment.
And Sherry and Tina, if you would talk about the relationships or partnerships that you have with not only those other positions within Far West, but also with the clubs and the councils. How do you go about establishing those relationships? Do they reach out to you? Have you reached out to them? That sort of thing. So Tina, if you wouldn't mind starting off.
I haven't been doing it long enough to have a connection to the clubs and the councils. I just know through our meetings, and it doesn't really affect my position as far as I've seen so far. But I can tell you that the connections within the organization are fabulous. And every time I've been secretary of anything, like Dale and Sherry have commented on, and Bill too, it's always something that's appreciated. And so you really do get a lot of support from everyone, no matter who it is.
And Sherry, your thoughts?
And I will second that exactly. Again, it all goes back to the length of time you've been in the organization. I have to say that no one has really reached out to me and asked me about how to be a secretary, except for Tina when Tina came along. So I certainly reached out to Debbie Stewart when I became secretary, because she came up to me and said, "I'll help you," and I said, "Thank God," and we went from there. So it's that relationship is really invaluable. But again, this is the difference between me coming into the job knowing a lot of people, and Tina coming into the job knowing a few people. So that is kind of the difference between the two.
Okay. Let's see. And that is it for our topics for tonight. Before we wrap things up, I do have a couple of asks. Some of you came in later. If you would be so kind as to put your email address in the club and council that you're associated with in the chat box if you haven't already done that, so that we can make sure to send the link to you, because this meeting is being recorded. We want to make sure that you get that link. And also, there's going to be a post survey sent where you tell us a little bit about this meeting and provide us with feedback and comments and so forth, because this is the first of what we hope will be many. And Miss Sherry, yes ma'am, you have a
So
comment?
I did have one comment that I wanted to kind of touch base with that slipped my mind. It's really interesting, the different organizations that I've been a secretary for, how much information the organization wants recorded. When I started as a secretary for NWSCC in 1991, we recorded the minutes and they were typed on a tape recorder, and they were typed word for word. This was back in 1991. So every word of every sentence, anyone said was put in the minutes. Then I became the secretary for our race league, and again, I was quite detailed. And I worked for the president of the league, was a corporate attorney, and he pulled me aside one day and he said, "Sherry, you don't need to say all that stuff. There's a treasurer's report, and you don't need to tell everyone ad nauseum everything that was discussed. You say the treasurer presented the budget for 2022. There was discussion. That's all you need to say. You don't need to say we talked about this going up and that going down. There are all kinds of shortcuts that secretaries can take so that you don't have to rewrite, take the entire meeting and exhaust yourself. Just, the bullet points. But make sure your organization, you have in your head what your organization requires so that you can keep that information accurately. And Tina's got her hand up.
Yes, Tina.
I wanted to make the point that Sherry has been like an admin assistant in the corporate world, and so she kind of has an outside perspective of what to do for minutes. So I just wanted to point that out. Like, she has a little bit of a broader span of what is supposed to happen in a corporate environment, which you could kind of take from and use in your association just to make it easier.
Thanks. And so what, if I could summarize in a few words, Sherry, what you said, you're recommending recording outcomes versus discussions. Okay. Good hint, because I don't know about you all, but I missed learning how to take shorthand back in high school. I only learned how to, although I will say I do regret not learning shorthand as I was in college and wanted to take down all those notes, but nevertheless. Okay, so that wraps up our topics and our presentations by Tina and Sherry. And so a round of applause, please, for our experts. Yeah, thank you very much, ladies. Appreciate it. And now we'll open it up for other questions. If you guys have any other insights. Okay, we have Bill raising his hand. Go ahead, Bill.
I think what Sherry just said actually opens an interesting concept, and I'm betting Todd will have something to say about this too, because what I heard in the broad strokes was that mentorship was important to Sherry having a handle on doing her job appropriately. And she had someone who was able to guide her into what she needed to do and what she didn't need to do. And I found the same thing. I've worked with, oh gosh, I don't know, 4 different secretaries over my tenure, and everyone's a little different, and they all, there's always a little bit of a learning curve into what the club needs and expects. But that comes right down to, once again, mentorship, whether it's a previous secretary or another officer who knows what's going on. And that just falls right back into succession planning, which is Todd's bag, obviously. Because when I'm looking to recruit a new member onto the board, that's always going to be their first question is, well, what do you expect of me? What do I need to do? What do I don't need to do? So on and so forth. And if someone has a handle on that, it's a lot easier to get someone to sign up for something that they can wrap their head around in terms of what the job looks like. So we've gone so far as to we have people sit in on our board meetings so they can see how we operate and see if they're comfortable in our framework for the same reason. But I'd love to hear maybe what Todd has to say about it, because like I said, I know he's thought about this a lot.
Okay, Todd, it's your
Um,
dime.
yeah, no, I'm trying to make sure I'm unmuted. Uh, the most definitely, and thank you, Bill, for the softball. Um, but definitely to ensure that where possible, we have the ability to transition. And as well, I liked what I saw with you guys, where you have the documents are stored in a central repository, so that um, if there isn't the capability for being able to make a transition, that you have that repository of documentation there. So that's very key. And I'd like to hear other people's perspectives on what they've put into place. I know we have Michelle Starkey is on the call. Um, are there items that you have found to be valuable in transitioning in or out of roles?
Yeah. I would say that in my other job, the job in the Far West Ski Association is a new position for me. So I haven't really started it. But in my other ski club that I work for, it was a pretty terrible transition. So I just had to use my common sense. And I think I did a lot of the things that everyone's talked about. Using the agenda is really important for keeping the president on track and for taking notes. I'm not a shorthand person, so I take notes by hand, and that way I can just type them up later. I like the idea of having a central place online. We're trying to implement that in my other club. We have a website, but we don't have a place to store the minutes yet. We haven't used AI. It's an interesting thought. Um, and everything else that everyone said, I agree with.
Thanks, Michelle, for your input. That was great to hear what you are doing and your experiences. Anybody else have questions or would like to provide feedback or comments?
I see that we have Linda Coxon on as well. Is Linda still on?
I see a Linda C.
Yeah. I was wondering, Linda,
Yes.
if you have in transitioning, what any tools that you found have been good for you to either transition into a role or transition out of a role.
Hmm. Um, well, as treasurer, um, it was always, I don't know, I think it's a little easier because it's, pretty much black and white. Uh, so I don't know. I way back when I was secretary, and I wasn't a very good one because I took all the notes by hand, meaning to go ahead and transcribe them. And that was something that didn't happen very often. So I like the idea of using the computer, like Sherry was saying, just bring the laptop and take and type. Um, Personally, I couldn't type that fast, um, but I really don't have a whole lot of insight right now.
Well, no,
Um,
thank you. That was good. That
okay,
was
thank
good
you.
insight. And I do see that Tina said, "Isn't texting shorthand now?" Relatively BRB.
I have a question just for the general group. I think it's interesting that I do any of you have, or are you as a secretary, are you in it for more than 1 year? I find it interesting that even though secretary is considered one of the toughest jobs, it's like a 1 year gig. So maybe you're finally learning how to get things going, and then maybe you've got the opportunity to bail, right? So maybe it should be a multi-year office just to get the mileage out of the one you've elected, or at least give the person who's been elected a little time to learn their job.
That's
Out
a
on
great
my
question,
end,
Sherry.
yeah, we've got 3-year term limits for officers, of which secretary is one. So, but typically, unless there's a war going on inside the board, as a general rule, I had a secretary who said, I'm not doing this job anymore because I'm tired of listening to you guys fight. Honestly, I've since learned not to create that situation, but if the board's getting along, we don't seem to have trouble having a secretary hang in for 2 or 3 years, and it's more of I think, a factor of the general environment. To be honest with you, because like I said, I've seen toxic boards, and I've seen boards that get along really well, and
Right, but it's a 1 year term, right? They're
yeah,
elected for
still a 1 year term, but
nobody has a
um,
multi-year term secretary.
no, I don't think
Okay,
so.
We
that was
actually
my
do with the Western region. It is a 2-year term.
It's
Jeff,
also a 2-year term at the Federation. And as a glutton for punishment, I agreed to run for another 2-year term.
okay, any other comments, questions,
You know,
suggestions?
I think term limits is a great idea, and we need to put the term limits on the Far West Treasurer.
Oh, that comes from the guy who's been the treasurer for 18. Well, no, not
I
18 years
smell
because
an
you were
escape
president
clause
before.
coming in from somebody named Lou down there. I don't know.
No, there is a such thing as treasurer for life.
I know.
Sorry, Randy. It sounds like you're
But
out of luck.
Randy, I'm so glad that Randy spoke up because we mentioned at the beginning of this session was that this is a series, a leadership series, and since Randy spoke up, I wanted to let you all know that the next topic that will be coming up in another couple of months. Stay tuned. But we're going to give you a couple of months to chew on your sips and snacks with the secretaries. And we will have treasurers will be next up on deck. So we'll hear some. We'll have the focus will be on treasurers and the transitions and some of the same topics that we've had tonight with secretaries. We will have with treasurer. Randy, did you want to just give any preview? Don't give all the goodies, but give them a little preview of some of the things that of the topics that they may hear in our next session.
You know, how to write a check, how to balance a bank statement. But truthfully, there are so many other things that treasurers need to think of: risk management, asset protection, uh, reporting, all kinds of things.
Aha, great Fisher. Yeah, that's wonderful. That's a nice bait for them. So make sure if you felt like we are going to have a survey. We'll be sending out the survey. We'll try to make sure that you include your email address. It's already been stated, but make sure you include your email address in the chat box here, especially if you didn't register on the Far West Club Express event for tonight. But we will want to email you out links, one, as was mentioned, to the recording, as well as to the um, survey. So Any other topics? I do see a chat has come in. A note. Okay, Michelle with Rusty Bindings. Oh, Michelle, I didn't know you were Rusty Bindings. Very good.
Todd,
Yes.
Todd, um, can you um, can you repeat what was that about Club Express? There was a sign up there. I only
Oh, okay.
knew about this through the Facebook, and then of course um, little inside knowledge, but I did not realize that there was a Club Express sign up. Can you
Ah, very good.
expand on
Okay.
that?
Well, and the so on FWSA.org, the Far West Ski Association.org website, when you go to About, there is a calendar. And we're going to be using the calendar for the sips and snacks with the treasurers. And so once we set that date in stone, we'll be setting that up. But there is a calendar on the Far West Ski Association website where all member clubs and councils have the ability to post any events that you have coming up and that are especially that are open to the public, because we are aware that in some cases some events are at people's homes, so you want to keep that a little private, but you can post and then have people register, and then they can receive the uh, the details once they are approved. So you have that ability. That is a feature, and I'll let the Joe Harvest, who is the expert, actually was the brainchild behind the launch of the Far West, the new Far West website, to speak more about the calendar. Joe?
Okay, yes. While you can go to the About drop down and click on Calendar, if you just scroll down on the main homepage, you'll see there is, after the announcements, there is a 9 square block of different information, and one of them is the event calendar. And all you click on that, it'll opens the calendar for the current month, and it'll show you what's going on, and you can advance it and so on and so forth. But anybody who registers as a user of the website can post an event, and you can, if you wish, you can require them to register for that event, and you will get a email notification that someone is registered, and those that have registered will also get email notifications and reminders. Um, it's very simple to use. It's very straightforward. You can put as much or as little information as you want. Um, I highly recommend using it. And there is just a feature that I've known about, but I thought it was something I needed to do, where those clubs and councils under the Far West umbrella that also run Club Express we can share it. You can put something on your calendar and get shared back and forth. And I was under the impression that I needed to do something to turn it on, and I hadn't figured out what it was that I needed to do. And I happened to have a conversation with someone at Club Express last week, and they said, "Oh no, we do that. You just tell us you want us to do it, and we'll turn it on." So that's in the works for the Far West website. So I know Phoenix Ski Club, if they post something, I think they may have to agree to share it. I'm not sure exactly how it works, but there are a number of our clubs and a couple of councils so far that are using this. And there's even a couple more I've learned recently that are looking at it. That once that's all incorporated, you will, if you want to share an event with your Far West friends, you don't need to post it on your site and our site. It gets shared. You just post it on yours and it filters up. If it's something on the Far West, it's supposed to filter down. So that's a neat concept. Hopefully we'll see how it works fairly soon. But yeah, the calendar though, take advantage of it, whether you're running Club Express in your club, or if you want to post something for Far West to get more people, by all means, please do so. It's fairly straightforward. It asks you questions. You just answer the questions and fill in the information.
Thank you, Joe. I also see that Bill Binky has his hand up.
Yeah, since I've got Joe here, I wanted to ask a quick question because I've got all my stuff's up here and running, and I went and looked at the Far West website, and we talked about, you log in as a member. But what I did want to ask Joe is, it's a little bit obscure how the member sign up is obvious, or the member login is obvious, but the member sign up is less so. For me to create an account on Far West, do I just go in and select just member and then put in my data, or am I missing something here?
Well, if you're a member, well, Mike, see, when I go into the Far West website, I had it remember me the first, so it always logs me in automatically. So
Understood.
if you just click on the remember me, it'll know who you are, and then you go and my understanding is of the way it works is someone who may be a member of Far West, but they haven't registered with our website, can still go and register for an event without filling out their
logging in, without
a login. If that's not working, please tell me so I can investigate more.
Okay.
But I'm under the impression that you do not need to register you do not need to get a member user ID and log in order to register for an event.
Okay. And also,
I can confirm that's the case, because we have had people that do not have user IDs. But I think, as part of your question, Bill, how do you get a user ID?
And I think I'll discuss that in another venue with Joe, because we're kind of getting down in the weeds about access.
Well, that's fairly easy. It's just when you come onto the Far West website, if you're not registered as a member user of the website, there's a little button there that says sign in or register.
It says member sign up. Yeah,
just click on that, fill in your information. It'll send you your username and password.
Okay.
You do need to do that in order to post an event. That's
where I was headed with it.
Yeah, so you will need to be registered with the site in order to post events to the calendar. But you can register for an event that's on the calendar without signing in.
All right. Beautiful. All right. That answers my question. Appreciate it. Thanks, Joe.
Okay. Anybody else? Okay, well, I have run out of sips. Has anybody else run out of sips? Okay, so we timed this just long enough. Hope you had plenty of snacks. Randy, be prepared for the next one. Thank you all very much for participating, for being our guinea pigs for our first of many sips and snacks. I hope you got a lot out of this. I know we did. And as I said, there will be a link sent to you so that you can view or hear the recording of this. And again, many, many thanks for your participation. And having said that, I am now signing off. Thank you all very much.
Thank you, Janine.
Thanks, everyone.
Ladies. Good night.